All right. Welcome, everyone. We're now live. Welcome to all of you on Zoom. Good to see y'all. And good to see everybody on Facebook as well. Thank you all for joining. Sarah's out to join us as well, so that'll be nice. She's just hiding some candy from any kids who struggle in here, so gotta try to hide our supply.
Work up there? No?
I can't figure out how to do it, so if you can, I'll try to. Okay. But yeah, again, welcome.
So cool. What are you working on?
Welcome, Ricky. I see you there on Facebook, and Alex and Rose. Thank you all for joining us.
A puzzle? Yay! So fun. Enjoy. Hi guys. Hi Jacob, Charlie, Zadie, Aaron.
Hello, everyone. Good to see everyone. Craig, good to see you. Benjamin, great to see you. Craig, a pleasure. Thank you all for joining us. And yeah, we're getting ready to roll here. So
yeah.
Okay,
sorry.
That's gonna be all okay. We'll see you, man. She's cute. Great Broncos jersey, but you'll see you later.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us.
There we go. Okay. So I had some questions come in this week because last week I showed a menu that I was making of what I was making for the holiday of Shavuos, and it was a lot of food. And as you know, we're not having guests right now, so it's just us, and it was really a lot of food. I had food scheduled almost every hour of the evening through the whole night. So to answer your question is no, I did not make all that food ahead of time. The pizza, I had leftover challah dough, and actually we cooked the pizza on the hot plate. Came out very good.
How about at like 1:30 in the morning? Hey, Todd, by the way, Kobe, good to see you all. Josh.
Some things we never got to the corn dogs. Those were Morningstar. Would have just probably stuck them on the hot plate or in the oven. Never got to that. We were asleep. Never got to the tradition soups. So no, we did not eat all that food, and I did not make all that food, but it was great to have a fun plan for everyone to look forward to. No regrets.
Yeah, I tried to take a midnight nap. It was like a halachic trick I did, because it gets confusing, like what to do if you stay up the whole night and how to say blessings the next day. So like, I'm just going to avoid the problem and go to sleep for a half hour at midnight. And that turned into a lot more than just a half hour. And then when I woke up, I was basically incoherent. I couldn't speak or learn or do anything. So all I could do was eat pizza, and it was great. And I still am regretting that.
So if you're trying to stay up all night, don't take a nap in the beginning of the night. That's our advice that we. Because
supposedly you could like consume a lot of caffeine and then take a nap, and then it's a caffeine nap, and then you're ready to roll. Doesn't work so much at midnight. So I don't know about the earlier in the day.
Yeah. Shout out to cousin Andrew. Who's watching. Andrew. From
good
Facebook,
yes.
And Tracy. Cool.
Amazing.
We had another important, right?
Another important question. Oh, about my beard?
Yeah.
So now that Svira is over and the Omer is, we no longer need to avoid shaving. The question is if I should keep the beard, let it rock and let it go, or do quite a touch up. That's the question. So if anyone wants to just express your opinions on the matter, we would appreciate it, because I waver every 10 minutes.
Sure.
I was ready to take it all off, last night, and then woke up, swore to myself I never would touch it again. So, okay, I like it. Ricky says to keep it. Ricky is a smart woman, so I think
handlebars. Todd says.
Oh, I did that for Purim. Maybe I'll do that again. I like that. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Robin. Welcome.
We appreciate all y'all's feedback. So
Jacob, your porch looks awesome. What a good spot to watch from. Beautiful.
Amazing. Okay, so let's dig into it. We have a full schedule tonight.
Yeah, very full. Now that we did updates on the Wolf household, we're going to move outside of the Wolf household a little bit to the greater country, at least.
Yeah. For sure. As we all know, I think we're all aware that a lot is.
Cousin Andrew says keep it.
Oh, yeah, if my cousin says keep it, I got to respect that. I got to respect it, and I got to keep it. So, Andrew, I appreciate that, and God willing, I will follow through with your. I believe your brother Stephen has a pretty sweet beard. Do you also? That's I'm not sure, but let me know. Okay. Anyways, it's great to have everyone here, and obviously the world has changed since we got together last time. The world has greatly changed, And we wanted to talk about it. First of all, maybe to just talk about something happy. I guess that happened, as I'm sure, some of you were observing and watching the excitement from Florida when the new space shuttle SpaceX launched. I watched on Sunday as they reached the space station, and I learned what the space station was, and it was a beautiful thing. On Facebook, watching how people from all over the world are commenting, and it felt pretty cool to see that. So that's obviously the happy news and the unity that I thought was very beautiful. And then, as we're aware, like I said, a lot of not so nice things have happened necessarily in the last week since we last convened here. And, there's been a tragedy that on many levels that has gripped our country. And I think that we just wanted to reflect a little bit on that, just to give you what's up, Ben? But to give you an idea of, what we're looking at tonight. And we're going to, Sarah and I are going to just give an approach to how we are kind of observing these events, these historic events going on. And I want to just give an approach to that. And then we wanted to go ahead and have some interviews with some amazing people, some amazing humans of JUPRO, and also a good friend of mine who will share something very special that he's doing. He survived the COVID-19, and he's now regularly donating plasma to help people. So we're going to hear from him as well at the end. And without further ado, let's dig right in. So, I wanted to just introduce that, overall, in America, when historic things happen, I'm immediately brought back to the days around 9/11. There was another time in our history where just, these incredible, these unprecedented things happened. And obviously our country was filled with devastation of the mere loss of, the loss of life, the devastating loss of life. But I don't know if anyone here remembers the aftermath of that and the feeling that a lot of us had afterwards of unity and togetherness. There was a feeling of unity and closeness with our fellow Americans, really across the spectrum. And it was very special to feel that and to feel so close to everybody. The person next to you in the car, the person in front of you in line, what have you. There was a closeness that we felt, and I was hoping that perhaps could be a silver lining of this pandemic that we found ourselves in. That we're all in this together. We're all fighting this same foe together, and I know in Israel there's been some very beautiful images that have come out and stories just about the Palestinians and the Israelis dealing with it together. The same microscopic enemy that we're all fighting. And I was hoping that to some extent we could see that here. Maybe a little bit it has, but I haven't necessarily observed it. I've observed more of it, more just, I'm trying to think of the right word, polemics. Whether or not we should open up the world or not often depends on if you're a Republican or a Democrat. And that saddened me tremendously, that we weren't able necessarily to have this incredible feeling of unity across the world and across the country. And I thought that was indeed very sad. So we have that, obviously. And then last week happens, right? Last week, and as many of us have seen, I'm sure a lot of us have seen the horrific footage of that video in which George Floyd, a black man, is murdered by a white police officer. And, there's different ways to understand exactly what happened. After reading up a little bit, it seems like the most favorable way that you could possibly interpret this is, I saw a news article about this, I think it was NBC somewhere, that potentially the cause of his death was a combination of factors, including intoxication, heart problems, and then the pressure on his neck. So according to this favorable version, there were other things happening, to George Floyd at this moment. But at the very most favorable way to look at it, the policeman callously ignored a suffering, dying man's pleas to stop. And despite the fact that Floyd had indicated very clearly he was unable to breathe, leaving his knee on his neck for a very long time, 8 minutes and 49 seconds, whatever it is, 9 minutes, whatever it is. horrible to see. And again, I'm sure a lot of us have seen that, and it is indeed hard to get that horrific image out of my head. That's the most favorable way to look at it, I would argue. The least favorable way, at least, again, from the perspective of the policeman who committed this crime, the least favorable way from his perspective is that he murdered a helpless man who was dying, and he was the direct cause of death, and he just murdered him. Horrific. Either way you look at it, I would argue that it's incredibly tragic, devastating, unnecessary, and needless. And that was what we were faced with, last week, the horrific crime that had happened once again to a man who, is unspeakable.
Yeah. As soon as we turned on our phones after Shabbos and this holiday of Shavuos, that's right. That's what.
Right. So I believe, I think, I don't remember the exact dates. I think it happened like shortly before that. So yeah, I think it all went down shortly before this 48 holiday of Shavuos. And then we, Sarah and I and a lot of Jews across the globe went offline for 48 hours from Thursday night till Saturday night. And we came back online.
A lot changed.
A lot had changed. The world was on fire. Cities are burning. People are looting. And, we're now in this reality. Synagogues, by the way, are defaced. I think, in Fairfax, California, there was a Free Palestine, F Israel sign. And I know other synagogues across the world, I said Montreal as well, have been defaced. Again, as if there's any sort of correlation. It's absurd, why that happens, how that happens. And now most of us, a lot of us watching, at least from Colorado, and I'm sure most other cities across the country, we're not on lockdown now anymore from the pandemic. We're on a curfew. We can't go out at night. I don't remember ever experiencing in my life a curfew.
Or a lockdown or anything of the sort. So now we got one after the next.
One after the next. Right. Yeah. So really just confusing times, tragic times, scary times, depressing times.
I say, hi, Abby, old friend. It's good to have you. Yeah.
And, it's, as I'm sure we're aware, on top of the horrific crime that again, most of us saw, stores, big and small, Target and Foot Locker, and people's businesses that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into are being looted, being robbed clean, and a lot of suffering is happening. A lot of suffering, people who were suffering enough because of the pandemic and the shutdown, now when they're ready to come back to their businesses, don't have a business anymore. It's burned to the ground or robbed, stolen from, and indeed very, very depressing. So, I'm observing, and it's been honestly, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy, pretty optimistic guy, and it's been a depressing week, a depressing few days for so many reasons. And for me, it's really, the kicker is the division that we're experiencing in our lives. Again, unlike anything I can ever remember in my lifetime, and a hatred that is permeating our society unlike anything I've ever seen. And when I think of, the Black community who's gone through so much suffering and so many tragedies that have occurred, I'm sad on multiple levels. And the first one is just very simply because of the inequality that they experience, the tragedies they've endured in recent weeks, years, and decades, and the fact that they have to be nervous, when they go out. If a policeman is on their tail, that's tragic and that's sad, and that needs to change. And I'm also sad because the extreme anarchists and violent rioters are hijacking their movement and reversing the progress that potentially could have been made. And I'll elaborate what I mean here, but my belief is that after the horrific murder of George Floyd, I think that it was possible that there could have been an awakening of the masses. Your average person who doesn't know too much about these issues, that they could have been awoken to the plight, that the Black American community faces, and they could really be called, to action to help affect change. And I'm scared and I'm nervous that because of the, this minority group of violent rioters and looters, I'm nervous that, in fact, that people will fail to see the nuance, fail to see that this is a minority group, and will affiliate the entire movement with these fringe groups, and will lose their support of the worthwhile movement and cause. And that's something that really saddens me. And the reality is for me that in life there's a lot of nuance, a lot of details, a lot of things are not always so clear in life. And I believe a person should go through life and try to be thoughtful and analytical in the information that's in front of them, and not just to have the entire movement, because of the looters, is I'm not interested in that. Or we don't want to take these kind of far extreme opinions on either side. Hopefully we can understand the nuance within every position. And so I'm sad because of this, because I'm nervous that a lot of people don't have the ability to see the nuance in these different things, and they lose the sensitivity, and they're not going to be as supportive of these causes, that the cause to raise awareness about the prejudice that exists.
Yeah, those who are coming and destroying and doing all the crime, they're ruining it for those who really care, and it's too bad. It's sad.
Yeah. And again, I'm nervous that a lot of the average Americans out there don't necessarily realize that a very large percentage of the Black community is adamantly opposed to this violence and the looting. I'm sure you don't have to look too hard on Facebook or Twitter or Google to see some of these passionate condemnations of these reactions. George Floyd's brother himself very passionately and articulately and beautifully spoke out against this reaction. The mayor of Atlanta, an amazing Black woman who very inspiringly spoke out against this. And I just saw a video actually a few minutes ago. I posted it on Facebook, in which in Far Rockaway, there was a peaceful rally, and the Jewish community of Far Rockaway joined as well in this peaceful rally. So I'm nervous that people won't see that, and instead they'll focus on the extreme side of it. And it's I relate a little bit to this, because as someone who is Jewish, sometimes I see statements or I read articles or videos of people purporting to speak for the Jewish people, people that I disagree with on issues, but your average American doesn't see that nuance. They don't realize it, and they come to just assume that me as a Jew, that my position aligns with the person who purports to speak for the Jewish community.
Whereas if you know the phrase, if you have 2 Jews and 5 opinions, you know enough to know that's exactly the opposite. Right. So there's a lot of variation and nuance, and we have to be careful never to oversimplify the complexity involved in these issues. And if one thing that studying Talmud has if there's one thing that studying Talmud has taught me, every day, is that life is complex, and there's a lot of ways to understand issues, and we have to think, in the realm of these complexities, and not always in black and white. No pun intended. Things are not black and white, and we have to see the nuance and see the details. So that's just the first point that I wanted to mention, and I thought that this idea was actually very beautifully expressed by something I saw on Facebook by a friend, Ellie Freelander, who posted these concentric circles. I'll show on Zoom here, and then here on Facebook. But basically, the premise is that a lot of times people assume, like, if you're not with me, then you are necessarily against me. Yeah. That if you think that it's wrong that there's looting and rioting, if you think that is wrong, then you support the policeman who murdered George Floyd. And it's that simple. That's what people think. Yeah. And I respectfully but adamantly disagree with that. It has here these concentric circles where it says that you can think George Floyd's death was murder and the cops responsible should be in jail. Okay. The police system is structurally corrupt and regularly refuses to prosecute cops.
that could very well, be true. I'm not an expert in the issue, but I'll take, it probably is true. Looting and burning businesses is immoral and counterproductive. People who should do so go to jail. Yep. Mass protests and civic disruptions are legitimate and warranted actions. Absolutely. One of our basic rights as Americans. And this is the godless, the greatness of the statement. You can be here. You can agree with every single one of those statements. And I think that is lost in our world today. And I think that is very sad, because you can be there. And this graph, I believe, most eloquently expresses my personal belief on this issue, that there's nuance, and we have to avoid the tendency to just put the other side in one corner and we're in the other corner, and there's no room for any cohesion. Yeah. So with that, I wanted to, we actually had 2 questions this week, 2 questions of the week, and I want to go to those. Lee, exactly.
You're not lonely. You're just alone. A thinking person. It's good. You should think for yourself. Yeah. Exactly.
Just because you're against rioting, right, doesn't mean you're not with the original cause, and that, I think, is a very beautiful point that you made. Thank you for that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just show we're going to show the first question of the week, posed by a friend of mine. I appreciate the question. I had actually posted on Facebook right after Shabbos, when I came to this new reality that we're in. I said, quote, 99% of the time after Shabbos or Yom Tov, I come back online blissfully to no major news. Sadly, tonight is that 1%. Hashem help us all. So,
can I just ask you, your other rant, when are you getting to that? Is that this?
Soon.
Okay. I'm excited for this next part too.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just warning, trigger.
Good things are coming. Interesting.
Again, God forbid to ever offend anyone, but I have to speak my piece here in a few minutes. And I hope that there can be a respectful conversation.
Yeah. Hi, Michelle.
Okay. So my buddy Uzi from Uzbekistan asks, as you can see here, after my comment as to why isn't Hashem help us all? and Uzi says very thoughtfully, why isn't Hashem stepping in? Why is Hashem, I'm saying Hashem help us. It doesn't appear he's doing so right now. The world has gone to chaos. Why is Hashem not stepping in? So that's the question I wanted to focus on first. Thank you, and Uzi, my buddy.
Great question.
Name has been changed for anonymity, by the way.
I was going to say, these are real questions. We just changed the name. The first time it really was from someone in Taiwan. Now we're just picking different places. But they are real questions from real people. Exactly.
So the answer to this, why is Hashem not stepping in, is very simply, I don't know. I'm not sure if, to what extent he has stepped in. I'm sure there's been a lot of miracles that we're not aware of.
Totally. But we don't know everything that's going on.
Exactly. We don't know what's happening, but I don't understand. I don't purport to understand God's mysterious ways. Yeah. And
it's okay to say, I don't know. I think that's also one of the awesome things, is that we don't know everything. And as human beings, we can't know. God created the world. Like, who are we to know and understand every little detail, right? You go to a doctor for help in the medical field. So too, like, if we understood everything that God was doing, then that almost like puts us on the same level. And of course, we don't have that capability.
Right. Yeah. Right. And no, for sure. And honestly, that is one thing that we're missing, because we don't have prophecy anymore, right? Since the destruction of the temple, we no longer have prophets. And therefore, one of the greatness of the prophets is that they could tell us when these wild things, what's up, Reb Johnny? Good to see you.
Rebecca.
One of these wild things that when wild things would happen, we'd have prophets to tell us what it meant. And now we're without that, and we mourn that. We mourn that we don't have a temple and we don't know. However, the great Rav Soloveitchik, the head, one of the original thinkers and philosophers behind the modern Orthodox movement of Yeshiva University, he said something that was very insightful. And he said that the word lama, why? So much happens in our lives. Why? Why is this happening? So he said that if you break the word lama down, if you break that down, it says lima, to what, for what, meaning we don't know why, but the word means like for what, or what can we do about this? What can we learn from this? What can I do about this? This event that's happening, this event that's happening. Aaron, I see you're posting on the Zoom. We'll try to cover that soon. I haven't quite seen the comments yet, but I'd like to get there when we can. Okay,
we're coming back to that.
We'll come back to it for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So, anyways, fine. Anyway, so the lemma for what? What can I do about it? What can I learn from this? So, interestingly, here's just a couple of thoughts about it. The next Jewish holiday coming up is actually a sad holiday. It's not a happy holiday. And I apologize on Facebook if I think we forgot to mention, we're trying to figure out with our computer and our video, it doesn't sync so nicely to the Facebook, so we're working on this, but bear with us. So the next Jewish holiday coming up is the holiday of Tisha B'Av, right? The destruction of the temple, in which we mourn that the Jews were exiled. They were, sent out of their lands, and the temple was in ruins. We lost prophecy. We lost all sorts of wonderful aspects of our lives, and we cry over that. And the rabbis tell us that the reason that happened, right? The reason why our temple was destroyed was because of baseless hatred, because people could not get along with each other, and they hated each other. That is why the temple was destroyed. And many have pointed out before that if the temple was destroyed due to baseless hatred, it stands to reason perhaps that the temple can be restored and rebuilt through baseless kindness, through loving one another, through chesed, through giving. And we need to love each other right now. We need to see the Tselem Elokim in each other right now, that godly spark within one another. That, I believe, is one thing that we can do right now about all of this, is to see the greatness in each other at this moment, right now, among all this division.
Yeah. I think it's like, when things like this happen, we want to know, what can I do about it? And this is one thing that you can do about it that can really make a difference. Is there's all this hate coming into the world and violence. So we need to do our best to combat that force and that energy, and just to bring the opposite and to bring love and kindness. So a lot of the rest of what we're going to talk about, most of it tonight, is just about that. And how do we do that? And what does it look like? Exactly.
And we're getting a little later than I expected. We started a little late, but so I'm going to kind of make this next part quick. I'm going to leave out a part so we can get to the main excitement, our amazing guests who we're bringing on soon. But I think that the following point is important, and it could be you'll disagree with me, but at least please hear me out. I believe that, again, the antidote to what's happening, the antidote to why we don't have a temple is that we need to love each other, and we need to respect each other, and we need to see the godly spark within each other. And this is true even if someone's skin is a different color from our own. And this is true even if someone's religion is different from our own. It is true even if someone has a different gender identity than our own, or a sexual preference from our own. In all of these situations, we need to see the godly spark within a person and not hate on them because of the differences between us. And yes, this is even true if someone has a different opinion than our own. Yes. So if someone disagrees with you, if someone says something that you don't see it that way, then I believe that it is incumbent upon us to still see that godly spark within them, and to understand their perspective, and to not cast them off as someone that you never want anything to do with. And right now, the reality is I'm deeply saddened and depressed due to the intolerance in our country. And I believe that just like it is intolerant to not want to be friends with a member of another race, another religion, another gender identity, someone with a different sexual preference, it is also intolerant to not want to be friends with a person with whom you have a different political opinion. That person also has a spark of godliness within you, and casting them off, defriending them, is being intolerant of them. And it's not helping the problem. There's an issue of a poisonous feeling in our country where people are afraid to speak their truth, to express themselves for fear of losing friends. That's where we're at today. And I want to cry over it. I want to cry over it. I've wanted to cry over this in 2016 after the election. And, I think I've expressed before, I voted for Peyton Manning. I saw posts on Facebook that, because if anyone would have voted for a third party, then just don't even be friends with me. And that was disturbing. And I was upset very greatly by that. And I think a person has to look inward and ask how tolerant they're being because someone has a different opinion than their own. And this is not just necessarily my own, thoughts. I think I'm based on a Torah perspective, what our Torah says as well. And I believe that rather than just being an echo chamber for our own opinions and associating with people who will be that echo chamber, I think it's important to hear other perspectives and challenge those perspectives, to be challenged by those perspectives, and to grow. And again, I don't believe this is just me speaking. This is a Gemara in Bava Metzia. We have two very famous chavrusas, study partners. And in Judaism, the optimal way for learning is kind of a one-on-one or a small group, ideally with people who disagree with each other. And we see this incredible idea from this Gemara from Bava Metzia. I'll basically just paraphrase it for you because we've gone a little bit longer than I had expected, as is wont to happen once in a while. But the Gemara says that Rabbi Shimon Reish Lakish and his chavrusa, Rabbi Yochanan. And at one point, Reish Lakish died. And Rabbi Yochanan, his study partner, was grieving. He was in despair over it. He was so sad. The rabbis are like, it's okay. We're going to send you a new chavrusa, a new study partner. We're going to send you Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas, who's very smart, very sharp. We're going to send him to go study with you. And Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas goes and he learns with Rabbi Yochanan. And regarding everything Rabbi Yochanan said, he brought a proof. He brought a ruling that proved whatever it is he said. And Rabbi Yochanan was distraught by this. And he said that when I would say something, my old chavrusa who died, Reish Lakish, would raise not one, not two, not three, but 24 problems with it. He would challenge me 24 different ways. 24 ways he would challenge. And yet you tell me, oh yeah, here's a support for you. That doesn't help me. I'm not here to just hear my own opinions repeated over and over again. I'm here to be challenged. I'm here to grow. And I'm here to make sure that my position is sound in this pursuit of truth.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the Gemara ends very tragically. Rabbi Yochanan goes around and he says, where is the son of Lakish? Where's my chavrusa Reish Lakish? And he cries out, and he begs that the rabbis should pray for his demise, because life was no longer worth living for him without having that dialogue, that conversation, and those challenges.
Yeah, so powerful. Like this great rabbi couldn't find anyone to challenge him. And like that was it. If we can't be challenged by others in our life, then like, are we thinking people, or are we just going along with what someone tells us and we just listen to it without thinking for ourselves? We need to, with everything, think about it and challenge it. And that's really how we come to truth, not just by listening to others.
Exactly. Beautiful. Right. So that's, again, my truth. That's what I've been wanting to say for 4 years. I hope we can still be friends. If I offended anyone out there, I value your opinion, and I hope that we can all respect each other. And please God, we can. There was one other question actually that someone asked, which was phenomenal. We don't have a whole lot of time to dig into it right now. Maybe we will be able to elaborate on it later. And the question is as follows. I would love to hear, this came actually from, what did we name her? 1 second. Mary from Miami. So Mary from Miami asks, we'd love to hear about the Jewish perspective on oppression and our responsibility towards other oppressed peoples. And what are some things we can be doing in line with Jewish tradition? Excellent question. Again, we're running a little bit later than I expected, but I did want to share just a few verses straight from our Holy Torah on this topic. The Torah tells us in Exodus 22:20 through 23, the following. It says, "V'ger lo soneh v'lo sechaltzenu ki geri ma'isam be'eretz Mitzrayim." You should not wrong a stranger or oppress him, because you yourselves were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not ill-treat any widow or orphan. If you do mistreat them, I will heed their outcry as soon as they cry out to me, and my anger will blaze forth among you. So, towards you, I should say. And we see very clearly that from a Jewish perspective, that we were oppressed, we were slaves in Egypt. We have had it very rough. We have had a very difficult time in our glorious history. It's been a glorious history, but it's been a depressing history. It's been a history filled with hardship and difficulty. And we are enjoined by God to have sensitivity and compassion to those who are being oppressed. We need to stand up for them. And, if God forbid we're ever on the oppressing side, that doesn't bode well for us. The Torah is very clear on this. And the Ibn Ezra actually says, and again, we'll turn it over kind of to the next portion momentarily, but the Ibn Ezra does say that that we must not, that anybody who sees someone who is being, if anyone sees an injustice, they see someone who's oppressing an orphan or a widow, and I would argue probably any person who's being bullied or oppressed, and they do not come to help them, they are viewed as if they themselves are oppressing them. The Torah tells us very clearly, Al tamod al dam re'echa, do not stand idly by while your brother's blood is being shed. You're not allowed to witness horrific crimes. You're obligated to stand up for the person who is being oppressed or harassed. Very clear. It's hard to debate that point.
Yeah, don't leave it to someone else. Someone else is closer. Someone else, just you do it. You see something that needs to be done, you take initiative and you do it.
Exactly, 100%. So I'm going to leave out a couple other sources again, just in the interest of time. But what I did want to end with before we call up our amazing humans of Jupro for today is the following: that I believe that a response that is appropriate in line with Jewish tradition, for one, is perhaps, as the Jewish community of Far Rockaway did, to express our support, to the Black community who's had such trials and such difficulty, and to let them know that we stand united with them, and we're by their side. I believe as well that it's incumbent upon us to combat the hatred in the world, as we said earlier, with love, and to work on ourselves to bring goodness and light to the world, to be a light unto the nations, and to strengthen ourselves in this, to go above and beyond at this time to do this, and to be more helpful to everyone around us, especially those who are more downtrodden and oppressed, especially them. The Rambam writes in the laws of Purim that the most important mitzvah of Purim, I've said this a lot before, is to give to the poor, because by giving to the poor is, and I'll read you his magical words here, this gorgeous words of the Rambam. He says you should spend the most money on this holiday to give to the poor, and there's no greater joy, he says, or glorified joy than bringing happiness to the hearts of the poor and the orphans and the widows and the strangers. And the one who brings joy to the hearts of the downtrodden are like God himself. They are comparable to God. The purpose of our life, the Kabbalah teaches us, is to be godlike, is to follow his ways. And God's ways are compassion. And we're meant to follow that. That's how we achieve closeness and unity with God. And doing so makes us like God himself. So that's what, I personally am going to be working on, during these days, is to try to be a light, to up our chesed, up our giving, up our compassion for everybody else, and to work on loving people despite any differences. That's, I think that's what, what I'll be working on in these weeks that come.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. So with that, we are able now to transition to bring on our amazing humans of Jupiter for today. And it is my honor and privilege. Oh, you know what?
There you go.
There's been a bad lag lately, so I think I might leave you guys just on the screen so it doesn't get confusing with my words not coming out right. So let me just try that for a minute. Okay, so just you guys. This is Cheris and Adam
Guys,
Berlinberg.
good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Can you all hear us? Everyone can hear us? Okay, awesome. So you can't see us right now, but we're here. Just because of the lag, we had to pull ourselves off. But guys, it is great to see you. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for coming on. And it's special to bring on Cheris and Adam because they were the really the last one of the last things we did as JewPro was we went on a trip to Israel, and the trip was all about giving and chesed and learning about how the Torah mandates that for us, requires that of us, and it's great to see you no longer in Jerusalem, but at least over a screen. You're not a couple miles away from us. So, great to have you here. So first of all, I want to just tell us where y'all are from and what you're up to in life. What are you guys doing, for a living?
Go for it.
Sure. I was born in Michigan and I've lived in Denver the majority of my life. I guess where we're at in life, we're staying at home for the most part. I'm not at work. I work at University of Colorado Hospital, but we're sort of shut down for the most part. So been hanging out at home.
What do you do at the university?
I'm a doctor at the university, but not in the COVID unit.
Very nice. Still amazing. Thank you for all you do for humanity. Thank you.
And I am from Denver, Colorado. I'm a 5th generation native.
Represent.
And for work, I manage the consulting division of a healthcare IT company.
Beautiful, amazing. Well, it looks like all our kids came out for the party.
They all wanted to watch.
It's a little loud. Just bring her somewhere a little more quiet. Thanks, bud. Okay, amazing. And then I'm going to want to start asking soon just about the idea of chesed and everything. But first, just tell us how you got involved kind of in our programming in JewPro. I'm going to describe that just for a moment.
You got started first.
Okay, so that would be, I've been going to programs on and off for a while, but then we started doing the Mitzvah Project last year. And that's our cat, Oscar, sorry. And we got involved through that. So that was great. We would meet up and do different community service projects around town. And then after that, we both really enjoyed it and decided to do more programming. And that led us to going to Israel this last winter.
Amazing. Beautiful. And so tonight, as I know you've been tuning a little bit, we've been discussing potential responses to what's going on, and something that we humbly suggested is that maybe we can up our game in the realm of chesed and kindness and giving. And wanted to just wanted to see if you wouldn't mind sharing with us some of what you learned about the chesed experience that we had on our trip to Israel. Just for those who are not aware, like I said, we did have this trip affiliated with Aish in Jerusalem, where they ran an incredible, inspiring learning and chesed trip for us. So I wanted to just see if you could share with everyone more about that experience that you had.
Number one, it was an awesome trip. For anyone considering going, I highly recommend it. It was incredible, and it was so meaningful to see all the different ways that people can give. So for me, what was most poignant is how the magnitude of the different elements of giving. It doesn't always take a lot of money or a big organization. It can simply be an individual movement that inspires and that creates a lot of change. And we did see some institutions that were really revolutionary there and changing things on a massive scale. But we also saw individuals just with big hearts that opened their homes and the impact that they made as well.
Amazing. Beautiful. Amazing. And that's awesome. You want to elaborate, I guess, on any of those individuals that inspired you specifically? Sometimes it's, we're sitting here like, what can I do? Just me. I'm not part of a movement. I don't have funding behind me. Like, what can I do?
Okay. Well, we met quite a few people along the way. We spent most of our time in the old city of Jerusalem, and a lot of the houses and apartments there are very small, not very nice. And we met a fair number of people who opened up their homes, even though they didn't have a whole lot to offer. So we met one lady, for instance, that was kind of the sort of underground food distributor for all the people in need throughout the city. And she kind of was able to collect all the unused food from a lot of different places in town, and then basically use her place as a central distribution center for getting food and supplies to the needy. And she would also bring in anybody who needed anything. So she would have random people passing through, whatever, anyone who needed a place to stay, she would throw down a mattress in her living room and let them stay with her. So we saw that on a small scale, all the way up to people who had lots of money and were very well off and had very big foundations and things going, and kind of everything in between. So it doesn't take much. There's not always a lot of money or time that's required, but there's a lot you can do.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
really the power of opening your home. I mean, that's what was so impactful. I mean, all these people were their houses and their own belongings, and yet they didn't have the sense of privacy that we so prize in the US. They were willing to share, even though they only had a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment with a number of children. They would welcome strangers in for the Shabbos or whenever they were in need.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I remember just another example. It was the Shabbos experience. We went to the Machlis family who hosts anyone who wants to come. 100 people, 20 apartments, and we had the privilege of cooking with them and to help them. And it felt like we were really, really helping, making a difference. So beautiful. Want to tell us about any, I guess, the larger operations, the larger chesed operations that we saw? Remember, it was a long time ago. It feels like 10 years ago.
A lot has changed since then.
It was 4 months ago.
I really liked Hatzalah. I think the whole organization and the concept is super cool, and it's something that would really actually work well in the US as well. So what Hatzalah is, it's a type of emergency service where it's individual volunteers that are on call. And when a neighbor needs someone, Hatzalah is there. So whoever is on call in the vicinity goes and assists in a medical capacity. So they're much quicker than an ambulance service. They're also free. So from a financial perspective, they save the individual a lot of money, but they also save their life by getting there quicker. So that was a super cool organization that required a lot of volunteers, but through those volunteer hours, they really made a large material impact. And that was an organization that went across cultural and religious boundaries. They helped everyone and anyone.
Amazing. And we'll put ourselves on the screen just for a minute here to show a picture. This is our picture from Hatzalah. And the founder of Hatzalah, Eli Beer, actually was afflicted very horribly with COVID-19. He was on a ventilator, fought for his life, and thank God recovered and went back to Israel. So, yeah, that was interesting, beautiful. Okay, and then what else? So Hatzalah, beautiful. Adam, I need to take myself off. I'm sorry. One second, guys. There it is. Any large organizations that we observed that inspired you specifically?
Yeah, Yad Sarah was a really cool one that we went to. It's a big organization that had medical equipment and devices and kind of whatever you needed. And they gave it to people for free or very cheap. So basically, if you needed crutches or you needed a medical bed or something, you go to them and they help you out, which is very cool because that stuff is really expensive in the United States. So they had plenty of volunteers and they helped lots and lots of people across the country.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, and that was a theme I feel like that we saw is all sorts of organizations that provided free services for people who needed them, whether it was the medical equipment or that place in Bayit Vegana, the name escapes me now, when they helped the children, with disabilities, for free. Programs in the afternoon. It was very moving to see that. Very beautiful. So amazing. Cool. What do you think, based on what we learned, what do you think motivates these people, so many of them dedicating their lives, to this? What do you think drives them from what you could gather?
I think it's all internal. For a lot of them, it's a story. It's something that occurred to them or someone they know that really resonated with them, that enabled them to see a need and then to see how they could be part of fulfilling that need. Yeah, so it's all an internal motivator.
Beautiful. Yeah. And then finally, what were some takeaways? I know that we had planned, some big things in the realm of giving opportunities for the community. Obviously, COVID-19 changed all that, but what were some takeaways that you took, from the trip, to try to bring back home to Denver?
Well, that's kind of still to be determined. We're still we're going to plan to do some stuff. Obviously, things got in the way, but it doesn't take a lot. It's just a desire to help in whatever means you have necessary. There's a lot of people in need, religiously, non-religiously, the homeless, whatever, in Denver. So there's a lot of different avenues, and it's really just the desire to help, and then organizing a group of people, coming up with a plan, and then going about doing it.
Yeah,
Amazing.
the biggest thing for me is the importance of starting something, the importance of getting involved and getting that momentum going. Whether it's joining a cause you believe in, becoming part of a board, forming a group with individuals that are active, being part of something and getting that movement started, I think what's most important, and then letting it develop from there. I know both of you all, Danny and Sarah, do a great job of providing different opportunities for people to get involved within the community. So taking advantage of those opportunities as well is a great way to make an impact.
Amazing. Beautiful. Thank you. That's awesome. It's great to see you guys. Any last words? Anything we forgot to ask you about, or you want to share? Or
I think so.
Great.
Yeah, really though, for those that are watching, if you haven't gone on a trip, do it. It's awesome. I highly recommend it.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, it's a very special experience, and trying to reflect more on it. It is very special. So thank you guys for both coming on it and sharing your experiences with us tonight. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. So see you guys soon. All the best.
Bye. See you soon. Hopefully.
Sorry. All right. And I think we're frozen. I don't know if anyone can still hear us. Sorry, guys. Okay, I think we're back. We have to add ourselves to the screen. No, we're good. Okay, we're back. Sorry, all the lag, weird computer stuff. Okay, it's now my next. It's now my privilege and my honor to introduce our. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. To introduce our next guest. I'll bring him on the screen in a minute, and I'll pull ourselves off the screen again. It's very special, actually, because the first time Sarah and I did this live from the bunker concept, when we shared the story of how we met, and the subsequent weeks, we dedicated every class to the growing number of people who were afflicted with the coronavirus. And the first name on that list for whom we dedicated our learning on those evenings was my friend Keith, who we're going to call up now, who's been through a lot these last couple of months, and he has turned it into something super inspiring and special. And I want to bring him on and have him share about that. So, Keith, thank you so much. I'm trying to bring you on here, but my computer's being very slow. I think you're with us now.
Hi, Keith. Welcome.
Keith, it's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Great to see you guys. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having me in your prayers and your thoughts and your learning when I was sick. It was incredibly appreciated. I've never had so much outpouring of support from all the various people in my life. So it was really, really incredible. Thank you.
My pleasure. And just by way of background, Keith and I go way back. He was the man who basically started up Aish Albany, where we used to work. He developed this incredible recruiting concept where we were able to get people involved in the program. We go back many years. And Keith actually now works with Aish Jerusalem, and he planned the trip that Cheris and Adam went on and just told us about. So it's kind of all Keith, it's great to have you. And now, we'll ask you a couple questions here, and you can kind of share about your journey. So I'll turn it over to Sarah to ask you, some of these questions.
Okay, Keith, can you tell us first what it was like in your journey fighting COVID? Just a little bit about it.
So to give you a little bit of background, so I got sick before we knew. I mean, before any social distancing measures were in place, before anyone realized how prevalent it was. I personally, and I was in New York for Purim, celebrating a Purim party with a lot of close friends. And Purim's obviously it's a day. People are exchanging gifts. People are going from house to house, greeting each other, and there was a tremendous amount of spread going on that nobody knew about because they hadn't reported cases yet in Brooklyn. There hadn't been any measures to social distance. Schools weren't out, so nobody knew what was going on. And cut to 3 or 4 days later, I started having a little bit of a fever. I started having chills. I gradually lost my sense of taste and smell, and it was manageable. It was generally manageable. The fever was not great, but it was manageable. But after about a week of being sick, I took a turn, which apparently, some people they get mild symptoms, they get better. Some people get no symptoms. In my case, I had started having major trouble breathing. My oxygen levels had fallen below what do you call it, below 85, which is like very dangerous. Below 95 is already like dangerous. You should be seen. And I just didn't know, so I went to the hospital, and they're like, "It's very good you came in. Thank God." I went to the hospital at a time before the hospitals had gotten overwhelmed in Baltimore, because at that point they're already like within 2 days after Purim, they're like, okay, they put all these measures in place. People started getting sick, and it was really bad in New York. And I was in Baltimore where they hadn't really seen it yet, and I was able to get personal attention and was able to kind of get what I needed. So I would say one of the big things that I fighting it it was a mental fight. It was a physical fight. I had to stay positive. I had to stay, not resign myself to being sick, and to try to move around and try to keep myself going and keep myself active, which I didn't realize was a part of it. And now, the more I read and the more I hear about other people have had it, it's a very real thing, that the mental battle, and the mental struggle that comes with it. And standpoint, what I've come to understand is the more physically active you are, the less you're giving it a chance to kind of take over, your body. The more idle you are while you're sick, the more damage it can do. And so when I was in the hospital, I was up and moving around as much as I could and as much as they let me. They gave me this, like, I forget what it's called, this like fancy thing to breathe into that helped my lungs. I was doing it constantly, and I believe that by doing these things, keeping myself active, keeping my body working, went a really long way to being able to fight it off. And thank God, after being in the hospital for 10 days and being on assisted oxygen, and being on lots of medication, and whatever they could try to give me to help, I got through it. And
Thank God, amazing.
Yeah, thank God. Thank you for teaching us and telling us about what happened there. What was going through your mind as you were slowly inching towards recovery?
I would say the biggest, I had a fear. I had a major fear that what's going to happen. Like, am I going to get it again? Is it just like, am I actually getting better? Or we don't really know what this thing is. We don't know, can I have a relapse? Can I get it again? There's a lot of fear for what's going to be, and wanted to say, like, okay, I want to take this seriously. I want to make sure that I'm doing whatever I can to prevent other people from getting it. I don't want anyone, whether it's coming from a perspective of what I have to physically do to keep others safe and not infect anybody, and it would be petrified to know that I didn't infect anybody. And at the same time, a fear of education, where I see lots of people behaving recklessly because they think, oh, it's not going to happen to me, I'm not going to get it, I'm young. And then the next thing you know, look, I'm 32 years old, and I was in the hospital for 10 days from this, and I was really, really, really afraid that it could have been worse. So I wanted to educate people, and on top of that, I wanted to see what I could do to give back to the community. Now that if it means like I'm healthy and I am immune, so maybe I can go shop for people that are more vulnerable. Maybe I can go, help and volunteer in some way with other people to help them, since I've already had it.
Amazing. Can you tell us kind of what you've actually done in those realms of helping people and kind of using your experience to make the most out of it and to do chesed? We're talking a lot tonight about doing kindness and chesed as maybe a response to everything going on.
So what I would say is the biggest thing, I think I did. I can give you two good examples right away. As soon as I got out of the hospital, I had heard from Rabbi in Jerusalem, Rabbi Kelman, was talking about how powerful, how powerful it was, and how much responsibility we have to, help other people if we've had it, right? That we have this thing called plasma, where potentially in the plasma is antibodies, and those antibodies can go and help other people who have had it already. So I said right away, okay, I've had it. Now I have a responsibility that, and especially because I had it early, how do I do it? So I got out of the hospital. The day after I got out of the hospital, I had follow-up calls with my doctor. I said, okay, how do I donate plasma? And he's like, I don't know. I'll let you know when I know. And 2 days later, another follow-up. How do I donate plasma? I don't know. I'll keep you posted. So I was really calling. I called the Red Cross. They're like, well, we're not ready. We're not doing it here in Baltimore yet. And what happened is there was a community initiative by the Aguda, by a Jewish organization based out of New York, that extended into New Jersey, into Baltimore, that was calling for Jews. They took it, because it was very prevalent in the Jewish community, and because the Jewish community has such a strong feeling of chesed, so they took it upon themselves to organize that Jews should be doing these donations. So as opposed to waiting for the Red Cross to actually start and get their act together, which to my understanding they still haven't necessarily done it down here, they basically started calling and working with independent blood centers, and in both in New York, in New Jersey, and in Delaware. And I've actually been going to Delaware almost once a week to donate. And I can expand on that also. The reason being, so my understanding is with the plasma, so there's a local option to donate through Johns Hopkins, but all of that is going just to research. So as far as the way the collections work, some of it, depending on who's collecting and how much they can collect and what they can collect for, it has different purposes. So they found these collection centers in Delaware, and they've been having hundreds upon thousands of Jews come all day long, every day for the last now month and a half, from Lakewood, New Jersey, from Philadelphia, from Baltimore, to these, underpopulated blood centers in Delaware, which for me is about an hour each way, a little more than an hour each way. And we go to Delaware once a week, which is how much we're allowed to donate. And they take our plasma, and each plasma donation that every person gives is can help 3 patients. And so they have the ability to kind of direct that plasma to wherever it's needed around the Northeast.
Wow.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
What is, maybe a lot of people know, but I haven't heard yet. When you donate plasma, what's involved in that?
So essentially, I mean, you go to this blood center. The first thing they do is they check your iron. They check to make sure you're healthy, make sure that you don't have a temperature. And they check your blood to make sure your blood content is healthy. I had to get antibodies test actually this week because once you've been donating for a certain amount of time, there's a concern that your antibodies could actually go down. And if your antibodies go down, then they don't want you donating anymore because they want you to be able to A, protect yourself, and B, that it's strong enough that it could actually help other people. So, Baruch Hashem, my antibodies, thank God my antibodies are still at a very high level. I just got the results back so I can keep donating as well. And basically when you go there, they do a bunch of tests. They put you in a machine that's essentially like drawing blood, except what it does is it goes through cycles where it's pulling blood out of your body, and you have to kind of pump. They give you a little like a squeezy ball. You have to like pump the blood out of your arm, and as they take the blood out of your arm, it's going through a machine that filters out the plasma. So it takes the plasma out, and then what it does is it cycles back in, and the blood that it's put in actually pumps back into you. So it's putting that in, and then it pulls new blood out. So it just goes cycles of pulling in, filtering, putting back in. So you go through cycles like that. It takes about an hour to donate. Feel a little bit lightheaded afterwards, but otherwise, fine. And that's about it.
So you're telling me it takes an hour to donate. You drive an hour there and an hour back, so it's 3 hours altogether.
About 3 hours of time every week.
And how many times?
I have 4 times.
Wow, that's amazing. So
yeah,
it's incredible. So that's 4 times 3 is 12 hours. Wow, that's very inspiring. And each time you're helping 3 people.
Yeah.
Wow. And I mean, it could be like it's a life-saving procedure for them, right? To get your plasma.
I mean, you're hearing cases of people who are getting plasma donations who are people who aren't on a ventilator, clinging to life, and the antibodies come in because the biggest problem, is what's happening with this virus is it takes over your body, and the more the more it takes over, the harder it is to fight it, and at a certain point it shuts everything down before your body, for a lot of people, can develop antibodies in order to fight it. And for someone who's immunocompromised, their body just doesn't have the ability to ever develop those antibodies. So you're essentially you're taking the tools that specifically are designed by the body genetically to fight the virus. Your body, if you have a good immune system, it knows what it needs to fight off a virus. So you're taking those tools from somebody who thought it and putting it into somebody who hasn't been able to develop those tools to give them a fighting chance. Wow. You're seeing it in patients. When they said the program I was part of, I got an email this week. When they started this program, they had about 10. They had enough antibodies for about 10 patients a day. When they first started doing plasma, before our this program had started. At this point in New York, they have enough for 1,000 patients a day. There have been, as of last week, there were 3,000 plasma donations that have been given. 2,800 of those donations came from Orthodox Jews who are part of this program, who have been donating through this program. It's astounding.
Could you
absolutely astounding?
Could you repeat that percentage one more time? How many out of how many?
So out of the 3,000 transplants that they plasma patients that they gave, because again they won't give it to everybody, but of the 3,000 people who have gotten plasma, in the Northeast, 2,800 of those plasma donations came through this program.
Well, 93% of all plasma donations there have come from, you're telling me, Orthodox Jews.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
Wow. So what emerges, is the Talmud tells us actually that everyone who saves one life, it's as if he's saved the entire world. So that means that you've basically saved the entire world at least possibly 12 times over. So we brought ourselves on screen so you can see us applauding that. That's beyond inspiring. And God willing, you got tested to make sure you can keep doing it and keep spending 3 hours every time.
As long as they'll have me. Look, it's such a little amount of my time, right? Like I know I went through it. I know how bad it was. I know how afraid I was. And if I can, it would be selfish for me not to do it. I think the big test is okay, well, they said, in order to do it, you have to go to Delaware, right? So I was just well, why can't I just go? There's places like the blood 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away, 20 minutes away. But the fact is, put your money where your mouth is. Like you went through this. You have the opportunity to do it. Okay, so you have to schlep 2 hours. Not a big deal. I can, I could to keep myself busy in the car for that time, and I'm very happy to do that.
Oh,
It means that I can do and give back for other people. So
beautiful.
Beautiful. Your priorities are just so inspiring that maybe we all just take that message and use it to live all aspects of our lives. Right? It's a little bit of extra effort on you. It definitely is that extra effort, but you see the effects. And if we could just all use that in our decision making, imagine how the world would change.
Right. And I assume, like, I don't know how it works, but your plasma.
yeah, I mean, I've never.
I'm sorry, Keith. What were you going to say?
What did you say?
I was just asking. I assume that
So no, I think we're
sorry, we're delayed. You go first.
refreshes. Yeah, essentially, you're asking if it regenerates.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
You're asking if the plasma regenerates.
No, I'm sorry. I'm asking. Does your plasma? It can go to anyone of any person who needs it, right?
Oh, so no. So no. Well, there is limitations based on blood type.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Just like any other blood donation.
And then,
so they had to figure out my blood type. I don't know all the combinations, but they know, I'm A negative blood type. So anyone who can receive an A negative blood transfusion could get my plasma.
Gotcha. And do you know? I imagine a lot of us out there have been possibly have it. Maybe we had it. I know when this all started, like I was sick. I didn't have any of the classic symptoms, but I was sick. Is it possible, do you know, for like me to get tested in Denver to see if I can start doing this? Does this, do you think they're doing this in all
So you would have to contact about local. So for this program in particular, I don't think they've done it in Denver. What I imagine they do have in Denver, either through your healthcare provider, because I know my healthcare provider now is offering it, is antibodies testing. And antibodies is a much simpler testing than say getting a coronavirus test. It's just a simple blood test that tells them if you have the antibodies. Meaning it's pretty simple. For example, if my wife was around me and my daughter who both had it, right? She never got sick, and she went and she got a blood test, and the blood test just told her negative. So she doesn't know if she had it or if she didn't have it, because just because you have an antibodies test, you can have a positive, coronavirus test, but still have a negative antibodies test. But what they're finding here, a lot of in Baltimore at least, and in New York, is that there are people who think they had it, they get the antibodies test, and they show they have the antibodies. If you have antibodies, that means you did have the virus at some point, and your body has since developed the antibodies to the virus. And if you have the antibodies to the virus, that means you can donate plasma. So if you think that you might have had it, again, it's a simple blood test. I would encourage, call your healthcare provider, call your doctor, find out where can I get an antibodies test, and if you have an antibodies test, where can I donate plasma if you have a positive.
Amazing. Beautiful.
Wow. So inspiring.
That's incredible, Keith. You made us speechless. It's beautiful what you've done, and it's really no words. So, thank you.
Thank God. I'll just end by saying that, like, to me, I feel extremely blessed with that. I'm still here and healthy. I feel like myself, and I feel like like I was before I got sick. And when I was sick and I was at my lowest, I thought I'm never going to recover. I'm not going to be able to breathe like this again. I'm going to have long-term damage. I don't know what it's going to be. I was very, very afraid. And so the fact that Hashem brought me through this, that I have the strength to get through this, that I'm able, I was home with my family by Passover, and I was able to spend Passover with my family, and have a Seder rather than being in the hospital by myself where I'm secluded from other people. Like, I have a responsibility now to go and do whatever I can, because I don't want anyone else to feel the way that I felt, and that people are feeling a lot worse than I felt. 100,000 plus people have died from this virus. So anything I can do to fight the change, and if all of us, if the how many 600,000 people in America who've had this virus, if everyone was going and donating plasma, that could be enough to save any future cases. We do whatever we can to change the tide, and if this is something that I can do, I just have to do my part. So.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Super, super inspiring. Thank you for that. So special. And, and God willing, God willing, we can just be inspired by you. Again, we've spoken tonight about things we can do to just bring goodness into this world, this divided, fractured world. And more of this is what we need. And God willing, all of us tuned in can think of ways, again, it's not literally to save people's lives like this, but to think and brainstorm and think hard how we can be more giving and selfless like you. So thank you so much, Keith.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. All the best, man. Great to see you. We'll catch up offline soon. Take care.
Yep.
I'll see you. Bye-bye.
Yep. Take care.
All right. So that basically wraps it up for tonight. Thank you so much for Keith. Really magnificent. So inspiring. The last thing of today
Can we
is
just review first.
Yes, please.
Okay, so let's just review. We talked about the theme of today's show was kindness and upping our game in kindness to combat all the hatred and the violence. So we talked about ways of giving plasma, right, from Keith. We talked about some of the ways that we saw to do chesed in Jerusalem when we were on our trip from Cheris and Adam. And then we also talked about loving others and being tolerant of people, not just based on what they look like or anything like that, but also on their opinions. So we're all entitled to different opinions, and that by no means should mean that we won't get along with others, but exactly the opposite, that we can get along with anyone, even if their opinions are different, and how that makes us better because it challenges us to think and be our best selves as well. Okay, so with that, here's our last segment of Rabbi Wisdom.
Okay, and thanks again for sticking with us until now. I just wanted to quote, get a little deeper this time in my Rabbi Wisdom. Last time I think it was "Don't play with fire." This time it is from Rabbi Wolbe, the great Jewish thought leader, Rav Shlomo Wolbe of blessed memory, who talked about kindness and how to think about kindness and chesed. He said, quote, "Each individual has limitations as to how far he is willing to extend himself on behalf of others. Growth in the area of chesed means broadening the confines of those boundaries."
Wow.
So again, each individual has limitations as to how far he is willing to extend himself on behalf of others. Growth in the area of chesed means broadening the confines of those boundaries. So be a little uncomfortable. That's how we grow in chesed. That's how we grow in the gym.
Wow.
That's how we grow in life and in chesed. So to stretch ourselves a little further, make a little less comfort, and God willing, Keith exemplified that, spending 3 hours of his day, many times over, an hour each way driving, a little less comfortable, a little less convenient. That's how we grow in chesed. God willing, we can take that wisdom, apply it, and change the world. Please go.
Chesed, it's in so many ways. There's so many things to say about that, and I'm not going to because we're about to finish. But chesed is not always easy. Sometimes it's something that's difficult for us to do, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. Really, that just means that we should do it, and by doing it, we're extending ourselves, and it'll be easier for us to reach the next level and go a little further. And that is, like you said, like the gym, that's growth. When you work hard, you get bigger, and this is spiritually also. You work hard and you get spiritually bigger, and the physical and the spiritual mirror each other, and it's cool to see that.
Exactly.
So, thanks for teaching us all that.
No, thank you. Yes, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a beautiful night. Stay safe, and God willing, our love and kindness for each other can change the world.
Yeah, it's nice to be in touch with you all. It's a great part of our week. Hope to see you again next week. Fun things to come.
All right, take care. All the best.